Derinkuyu is not the product of a lost super-civilization, but a refuge enlarged across generations, a place where Cappadocia's geology, Byzantine frontier history, religious life, and modern memory meet. Under an ordinary town in central Turkey, a second settlement descends into the earth. Rooms, passages, storerooms, wells, and places of worship were cut into volcanic rock, level after level, to a reported depth of about 85 meters, nearly 280 feet. Corridors could be sealed from within. Air and water could reach people below. Derinkuyu looks like a city built for life, yet its deepest purpose was the opposite: to help a community disappear. This is Derinkuyu, one of the underground towns of Cappadocia. Its strange design opens several questions at once. Who began carving it? Why did later generations drive it so far beneath the surface? How could a large group survive when every entrance became a possible weakness? And why, after centuries of use, does the evidence still refuse to give us one simple builder, one date, not the tax and rod? The first answer lies above ground. Cappadocia occupies a volcanic landscape on the central Anatolian plateau. Ancient eruptions spread layers of ash and debris that hardened into tough indignimbrite. Wind and water later shaped the softer formations into ridges, valleys, and the tall pillars, often called fairy chimneys. The same geology that produced Cappadocia's famous skyline also gave its inhabitants a material that could be cut with tools, yet remained stable enough to hold large interior spaces. Most architecture rises by adding stone, timber, and brick. Derinkuyu was made by taking material away. A chamber existed only after rock had been removed. A stairway appeared only after its path had been cut. Geological studies show that the builders worked within a volcanic unit, whose natural fractures influenced where walls could safely stand. Their achievement was not simply excavation. It was the repeated judgment of how much rock could be removed without bringing the world above down with it. But geology does not identify the first hand that held a tool. Popular accounts assign Derinkuyu to the Hittites, the Phrygians, early Christians, or another vanished people. The evidence is less tidy. Rock-cut spaces were altered again and again, and excavation itself destroys some of the surfaces that might reveal an earlier phase. The safest conclusion is that Derinkuyu was not the project of one ruler or one generation. It was a layered refuge, enlarged as new communities faced new dangers. That pattern fits Anatolia. The plateau has long connected the Aegean world, the Black Sea, Mesopotamia, the Caucasus, and the Eastern Mediterranean. Kingdoms and empires changed, trade routes shifted, armies crossed the interior, and local communities adapted without starting history over each time. Derinkuyu belongs to this continuity. Its walls do not preserve a neat national origin story. They preserve the habit of reusing a useful landscape whenever politics above ground became uncertain. By the 4th century, Cappadocia had become an important center of Christian life in the Roman Empire. Monastic communities occupied cells and sanctuaries cut into the rock, while theologians from the region helped shape early Christian doctrine. Over time, cave dwellings, chapels, villages, and underground refuges formed part of a wider cultural landscape. Derinkuyu cannot be understood as an isolated marvel. It belonged to a society already experienced in turning stone into shelter, worship, storage, and memory. From the 7th century onward, Cappadocia became exposed to repeated conflict between the Byzantine Empire and Arab armies advancing across the frontier. Raids did not require the permanent conquest of every village to be devastating. Livestock could be taken, crops destroyed, supplies seized, and people carried away. UNESCO identifies underground towns such as Derinkuyu and Kemakla as places of refuge during this period. Their design makes sense not as an escape from one legendary attack, but as protection against recurring insecurity. This distinction matters. Derinkuyu is often described as a fully functioning subterranean metropolis where thousands lived permanently. The surviving rooms support a more cautious picture. They show that a large community could remain below ground for a period of danger, with animals, food, water, work areas, and religious space. But they do not tell us that generations chose the deepest levels as their normal home. The underground city was less an alternative civilization than an emergency version of the community above. The order of the rooms reveals practical priorities. Stables were placed near the upper levels, limiting the distance animals had to be taken through narrow passages. Storage areas, cellars, kitchens, and spaces associated with food preparation extended farther inside. Wine presses and large containers connected the refuge to the agricultural life of Cappadocia. This was not a palace arranged for display. It was an infrastructure of endurance, designed around what people would need when returning to the surface was unsafe. The most important engineering was almost invisible. Shafts brought air through the complex. Turkish heritage authorities describe a main shaft about 55 meters, or 180 feet, deep that also functioned as a well. Other water points did not necessarily open directly to the surface, reducing the risk that an enemy could contaminate them from above. The system did not make underground life comfortable. It made continued occupation possible and separated survival from complete dependence on an exposed entrance. Defense shaped movement. Passages narrowed, changed direction, and connected floors through confined routes. Large circular stone doors could be rolled across key openings from the inside, turning a corridor into a barrier. An attacker who entered the first space did not control the whole complex. Separate sections could be closed, slowing movement and protecting deeper rooms. Derinkuyu's strength did not come from one massive gate. It came from forcing danger through a sequence of small, defensible decisions. Yet every defensive feature carried a cost. Narrow passages restricted movement in both directions. Supplies had to be brought below before entrances were threatened. Fire, smoke, waste, illness, and crowding could turn protection into another form of danger. The architecture reduced certain risks. It did not abolish fear or vulnerability. Derinkuyu endured because people accepted severe limits for a temporary advantage. Underground, they surrendered space, speed, and daylight in exchange for concealment and control. No surviving list names the planners, excavators, food keepers, guards, clergy, or families who used these rooms. Still, the arrangement permits one measured inference. A refuge of this scale required coordination. Someone had to manage access, distribute storage, protect water, move animals, maintain air shafts, and decide when sections should be sealed. The underground city is therefore evidence not only of technical knowledge, but of social organization, although the identities and rules of that organization remain largely beyond recovery. Religion was built into the refuge. Derinkuyu contains a cross-planned church on a lower level, and Turkish authorities identify a barrel-vaulted chamber on the second level as a missionary school, with adjoining study rooms. Other features have been interpreted as spaces for confession or baptism. These labels should be treated carefully, because the function of a rock-cut room is not always certain. What is clear is that worship and instruction were not left outside when community moved below. For Byzantine Christians, refuge was not only a problem of keeping bodies alive, a community also needed continuity, shared ritual, authority, memory, and a reason to remain a community during danger. The church at Derinkuyu gave spiritual life a place within the defensive system. It did not turn suffering into triumph, and it does not prove that every occupation was caused by religious persecution. It shows something quieter. Security was understood to include the survival of belief as well as the survival of people. The deepest mystery is therefore not a hidden treasure or a lost technology. It is the sequence of construction. Which chambers came first? When did separate caves become a connected refuge? Which features belong to Byzantine expansion and which may preserve earlier work? Rock-cut architecture rarely offers the clean layers of a buried building because later users can widen a room, erase a doorway, or cut through an older surface. Derinkuyu survives remarkably well, but it is also an archive that its own builders repeatedly edited. This is why claims that the entire city was built by the Hittites or the Phrygians go beyond what can presently be demonstrated. Earlier peoples in Anatolia certainly used underground and rock-cut spaces, and ancient texts describe subterranean dwellings in parts of the region. But resemblance is not a construction date. Without securely dated material tied to Derinkuyu's earliest chambers, a famous ancient name cannot fill the gap. The honest mystery is stronger than the convenient answer. What the evidence can say is already extraordinary. Derinkuyu was expanded into at least 8 major levels recognized by Turkish authorities. It included stables, food stores, work areas, water systems, ventilation, defensive closures, and Christian religious spaces. It operated within a broader Cappadocian tradition of rock-cut settlement. And during the Byzantine centuries, when the region faced recurrent raids and political instability, such underground towns served as organized refuges rather than improvised holes in the ground. The frontier eventually changed. Seljuk Turkish power entered central Anatolia, and later the region became part of the Ottoman world. The Christian communities of Cappadocia did not simply vanish at that moment. Churches continued in use, villages remained mixed in language and custom, and rock-cut spaces were adapted for new purposes. Derinkuyu's history is not a clean replacement of one people by another. Like the tunnels themselves, Cappadocia accumulated cultural layers that could coexist, overlap, or become visible only later. Evidence from the early 20th century shows that underground refuges were not merely medieval ruins. The linguist R.M. Dawkins, who studied Cappadocian Greek communities before the First World War, recorded that residents of Axo took shelter in underground chambers after news of the 1909 violence at Adana. His account concerns another Cappadocian settlement, not Derinkuyu itself, but it demonstrates the long survival of a regional practice. When danger returned, people still knew where beneath the village safety might be found. That living continuity was broken by the wars and nation-building of the early 20th century. Under the compulsory population exchange agreed by Greece and Turkey in 1923, Orthodox Christian communities from Cappadocia were relocated to Greece, while Muslims moved in the opposite direction under the same wider settlement. Homes, churches, dialects, and local knowledge were separated from the people who had carried them. The underground spaces remained in Anatolia, but part of the human world that had interpreted them was displaced. Derinkuyu then entered another phase. A refuge that had once depended on secrecy became an archaeological site known for public access. Turkish authorities opened the underground city to visitors in 1965. Even now, they state that only about 1/10 of the complex can be visited. That figure should not be mistaken for a precise measure of everything still hidden. It is a reminder that the mapped, stabilized route is only a controlled passage through a much larger and more difficult structure. In 1985, Derinkuyu was included within the UNESCO World Heritage Property of Göreme National Park and the rock sites of Cappadocia. The designation recognizes a landscape where geology and human adaptation cannot be separated. Volcanic formations, cave dwellings, churches, villages, and underground towns form one historical environment. Derinkuyu is protected not because it is an isolated puzzle, but because it belongs to one of the world's most extensive traditions of building within rock. Protection creates its own paradox. The city survived because it was hidden, enclosed, and used selectively. Modern preservation requires lighting, reinforced routes, controlled ventilation, monitoring, and a constant flow of visitors. UNESCO warns that Cappadocia's cultural features face natural erosion as well as pressure from tourism and development. Opening the underground city allows the public to understand it. Opening it too aggressively could damage the very surfaces, spaces, and geological balance that made understanding possible. Derinkuyu attracts legends because its reality feels incomplete. It has been linked to secret empires, impossible populations, and technologies beyond the ancient world. None of those claims is needed. The true achievement is more human and more demanding. Ordinary tools, accumulated knowledge, disciplined labor, and repeated adaptation produced a refuge that worked within the limits of volcanic stone. Its unanswered questions are archaeological, not supernatural. The gaps should invite investigation, not invention. Seen this way, Derinkuyu becomes a compressed history of Turkey's central plateau. It contains the geology of ancient eruptions, the religious world of Byzantine Cappadocia, the pressure of frontier warfare, the cultural layering of Seljuk and Ottoman centuries, the displacement of the 20th century, and the modern responsibilities of heritage. No single chamber tells that entire story. The meaning lies in the connections between floors, between communities, and between the land above and the refuge below. At the beginning, Derinkuyu appeared to be a city built to disappear. That remains true, but not in the way legend suggests. Its builders did not vanish from history in one mysterious night. Their names faded, because the refuge was enlarged across generations, reused by changing communities, and finally separated from much of its living memory. The city survived precisely because it could withdraw from sight. Today, its stone doors stand open, and the mystery they reveal is not how people escaped history, but how they endured inside it. Fact-check notes: Derinkuyu's earliest construction phase is not securely dated. Claims assigning the entire complex to the Hittites or Phrygians were excluded from narration as established fact. Estimates that Derinkuyu could shelter as many as 20,000 people appear in modern publications, but the archaeological basis for a precise capacity is uncertain. The script, therefore, uses cautious wording, such as a large community. Terms such as missionary school, confession space, and baptismal pool reflect official or common interpretations of particular rooms. Rock-cut spaces can be difficult to assign to a single function, so the narration attributes or qualifies these labels. Emma Dawkins's account of people using underground chambers after news of the 1909 Adana violence concerns Akso, another Cappadocian settlement, not Derinkuyu. The distinction is stated in the narration. The frequently repeated story that Derinkuyu was rediscovered in 1963 after a resident broke through a basement wall was not used because a sufficiently strong primary or institutional source was not located. Sources: -go.org and -go.org and https://cyan list 357 -go.org and alacrity list 357 -go underground city DK Y01 D-state tps://cyan1u.gov Chiur today Torius Turinum Ito OSTTPS://cyan.ito.edu.dk Y Coming to https://cyan churu.ttps://cyan1u.os dk gd2ts://cyan wwwd2nun ablok adjudate htms hta www.science Judas https://science article Pi
For the conservator, monitoring the impact of even a
S1877
modest flow of visitors is crucial to protecting this
Meal sighting
irreplaceable heritage
W
site.
Ties to Pash
As you can see, the
Clodor
craftsmanship is
Styrium
incredible. But look here,
WW
the impact
Data
of
Lapoliter
visitors is clear.
Duckaware
We face a delicate
Dawkins
Legends
Bear
speak of mythical inhabitants, but the
HTTPS
reality here in Derinkuyu
Science
is
A
far more human and perhaps even more
www
The
Tai
true story of this place is not one of
HTTPS
kings
colon
or gold,
Sashing and
but of
Sighting
simple, honest labor.
www Tai Tetrad Auto 1U 1 Dawkins Reed Tom the Wide Rick 2 Doubly Gourd Take T Binner HTTPS colon Cyan Babadio
The cuts are precise,
www.txt
but their purpose
T2
remains
E del
elusive.
TS
We
Judo
won't
T
know until we analyze the
Good
core
good
samples from the
Tuckament
barrier. Ordinary
ADS
labor,
colon
day after
Sashing
day,
ass
carved this
Artate
extraordinary
WWD
A silent
Tick
monument to human persistence hidden
Tell
deep within the earth.
Tell Sayo S New the TAC 2 www Dells TT D2 Dells
These rock-cut spaces provided sanctuary.
RTS2 to
But it
dot
was deep
gov
underground.
W
in
Dells
cities like
out of Usir T2 Tag 2 No Mo and you Del
Here in
TT2
Cappadocia,
Del X
Seljuk
No
stonework
Hall
and
Go
Ottoman
to do
timber
W
work with
Take
ancient
XT
rock-cut spaces. A testament to
HTTPS
centuries of
colon
layered history.
Sakow
We used
blogs
laser
and
scanners to
lamely
map the
dot
delicate
duke
textures
dot
of the
edu
volcanic rock,
blog
ensuring this
20
history
to
is
5
preserved for
out
future
est
generations.
C
The
tentacly
communities of
201
Cappadocia forged an entire
C2
world
talk
beneath the
cup
surface,
and also a
intricately
drill
linked to the
Duke
landscape above.
Jot BC C
Above
tour
ground,
the Browder
it seems
Resort
an
How
ordinary
D
town,
B C
but hidden beneath the
Tourdate
volcanoes of
50
vast
part as
city.
Tourdate Content
Far
tentacly
from vanishing,
Blog
the builders
Vouder 2
continuously
hour
adapted this
Dupad
space.
Fall
These
duration
layered
the
carvings
Cest
show continuous
50s real framed CF DB Bardist CF Est Extum D Partistes and Snexy dot Partist Hullard died blacked et on the dackles to the 5 dot u nondisco.org / D Puri Hugh dot u day s dot io UNESCO.org Oling
And this door
Onenisco.org
just rolls
Det
open.
357 Tachumet CSB Parting
mystery
of
is
C
not how they
Thatio
escaped history.
S Basie when Heldum Tentity Slates